Coming up on Chasing the Natty, we're getting started with CFF Dynasty Month by playing an old favorite game of the fantasy industry, Keep, Trade, or Cut. You all listening submitted your scenarios for the game, and we'll be breaking down all of those for you guys today. In order to help us out, we have the editor at campusdecanton.com and host of the Daily Draft Report, Dwight Peebles, joining the show. All this and more coming right after this.
Cutting, mesmerizing run by the quarterback.
Marvin Harrison Jr. touchdown. Marvelous
Ball next to the end zone, drop down for Franklin. Oh, majestic touchdown.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast. All right, welcome in everybody. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing Natty podcast. I hope you guys are having a wonderful ride to your work on this Monday morning or Tuesday morning or whatever morning, afternoon, or shoot, maybe you're listening to this at 12 o'clock at night as you go down to your refrigerator and grab yourself a handful of shredded cheese. Who knows? Wherever you are listening to this, I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful time. We got a lot of great stuff here for you guys today. It is CFF Dynasty Month over here at Chasing the Natty. Really excited for this month with you guys. Again, not a lot of content really gets put out there about CFF Dynasty, but a lot of people play in CFF Dynasty leagues, and so we're going to touch on a lot of that this month. And we're going to start today with an old favorite game of the fantasy industry, Keep, Trade, or Cut, from a CFF Dynasty perspective. And to help us out with that, I have Mr. Dwight Peebles, editor at campusdecanton.com and host of the Daily Draft Report. Dwight, how are you doing today, sir?
I am great, man. I'm so happy to be back on here. I kind of feel like I am probably the least qualified person you've ever had on this show. And I still, I love it. I'm such a fan of everything you do, man. So this is like I always love coming on here because when it comes to CFF, you're like my go-to. So I'm always happy to be on here, and hopefully I don't totally embarrass myself today. So
Dwight, you're going to be just fine, dude. Again, Dwight helps us all out over at campusdecanton.com. I think he has his hand in pretty much everything because his job is to make sure that all of us keep on the straight and narrow path over there, especially with all of our written content. He does a great job over there. We're recording this at night, so Dwight, considering the fact that I get a little loopy after 9 o'clock at night, and I also had some tea tonight with some caffeine in it, something tells me you won't be the one embarrassing yourself tonight. But again, we got a ton of great stuff. We got the Keep, Trade, Cut game. And the best part about that is that it was you all, the listeners, who gave us all these scenarios that we are going to talk about here tonight. So Dwight and I will be going back and forth, talking about what we would do in each of those scenarios. But first, I think we can go and talk about some of these transfers over the past week here. Dwight, nothing too crazy over the past week. Mostly it's been some of the players I talked about on last week's bonus podcast, which, by the way, if you haven't already, especially those of you who are listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, go check out the podcast feed. I put out an extra bonus podcast last week. There was so much going on in the portal, and we didn't really get to cover it when we did the awesome episode with John Lobb and Eric Froton with our Price is Right game. I recorded an extra bonus podcast about an hour long where I just went through all of the transfer portal news that was going on and gave you my thoughts on it. And a lot of the people I talked about last week that hadn't found a home, they have now found a home, so we can definitely talk about some of these guys here. Kind of a quick run through, we got 5 names up here on the screen. Caleb Burton, wide receiver out of Ohio State. He finds his way over to the Plains with Auburn. Peyton Thorne, the quarterback out of Michigan State, also finding his way over to the War Eagles at Auburn. Caleb Brown, the other wide receiver who transferred out of Ohio State, has found his way over to Iowa. And then speaking of Auburn, with all the Auburn people going to Auburn, you got some people leaving Auburn too, including TJ Finley, the quarterback over there. I think he saw the writing on the wall, knew he was never going to start there ever again. And then last but not least, you got Ben Bryant, the quarterback out of Cincinnati who started there last year. He has headed over to Northwestern. So Dwight, I'll throw this over to you. Out of these 5 names, which are the most interesting to you?
Oh man, this is a tough one. Neither of these really move the needle a whole lot for me. Caleb Brown is, if you're gonna put me to like backing up against the wall and say I had to pick one, maybe, but we don't really know what's going to happen in Iowa anymore. I mean, I do like that they brought in Cade McNamara. Maybe they have maybe what's his name, the coach there, I can't think of his name, I hate him.
Brian Ferentz.
He's got, there you go, he's got some incentive to score points and get this offense out of the doldrums, and getting some offensive pieces in there. I mean, I kind of like it. I'm a Michigan State fan, so Peyton Thorne going to Auburn does. I mean, shoot, if we got receivers complaining about him not able to get him to the ball, let's put him in the SEC. That doesn't make any sense. So Thorne doesn't move the needle for me. Burton doesn't move the needle for me at all. Ben Bryant, just, he's a decent quarterback. So I'm not really loving any of these, but if I had to take one, maybe Brown to Iowa.
Really, I'm actually really excited about this Caleb Burton transfer over to Auburn. Again, Caleb Burton, let's not forget, y'all, like he was at one point a 5-star in the incoming class that he was a part of last year. And again, high school injury hasn't been quite the same since then, but still, if he can kind of put things back together, he's going to a receiver room where he is going to stand out amongst a plethora of mediocrity over there in that receiver room. Quite frankly, again, you're excited about Caleb Brown. Caleb Brown made the worst decision, in my opinion. Burton understands that, like, hey, I still want to go to a Power 5 school. Let me go to literally probably the worst wide receiver room in the country, where I'm going to look great compared to all of these other guys. And they did, as far as I can tell. Auburn did just add Thorne, who I think is probably the best passer out of the bunch in that quarterback room, which is a really sad thing to say, probably. But even so, I think there's a little bit of reason to be excited about there. Again, obviously, don't be going and drafting him in like your 10th round of your CFF drafts or anything like that. But, I probably will take a shot on Caleb Burton in like, your round 20, 25 plus range. So who knows? TJ Finley, please, for the love of God, go to a group of 5 school. Do not stay in the SEC. Just accept the fact that you're not that great of a quarterback. You're not going to the NFL, and just go ball out somewhere, because he's got good
Bowling
legs.
Bowling Green, right?
Exactly. Go to Bowling Green. Bowling Green, any MAC school. God, that'd be so much fun. Put him in the Sun Belt as well. That could be really fun.
Yeah.
So, actually, it could be kind of fun to throw him at James Madison. James Madison doesn't really have a good quarterback right now. So, like, again, TJ Finley, he could probably go down there and do pretty decently.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I can see that. Yeah.
I'm trying to think anything else. Again, Ben Bryant, I kind of threw him up here because, again, he is a starting quarterback. He's moving up to Northwestern, which is actually kind of crazy to me because, again, like, he's not that great of a quarterback. But who knows? Who knows? Any final thoughts here, Dwight, before we kind of get into the meat of the show?
Oh, no, I do agree with you on Burton to a point, but I just don't trust Thorne. I mean, I don't think he's going to be any. I don't know. He's definitely not going to be better in the SEC. So I don't even know what he's going to be in the SEC. So, yeah, but I see it.
Who knows? I expect that Auburn team to be pretty bad. So maybe Thorne's just forced to pass and it force feeds Burton a little bit. Alrighty. We got the transfers out of the way. Let's go ahead and do what I consider my favorite part of the show, and that is my spiel, y'all. Got to give you my spiel over here. If you want to support what we are doing over here for College Fantasy, make sure you go over and subscribe to campuscanton.com, where Dwight does all of his hard work and making sure that everything is edited and nice and neat for all of you. But including that, or in addition to that, we have all of our written content tools and everything you need for your CFF, C2C, and Devy fantasy needs, and got a ton of great stuff coming your way. Go on over there, 3 different tiers. Pretty much all of them pay for themselves easily with the content that you are getting, especially with the guides that are coming your way. The freshman supplemental guide and the Devy guide have already been released, so go check out all of those. And we are currently fully underway with writing the CFF guide right now. And let me tell you guys, already we got a ton of guys working on that this year, and we are flying through. Lots of great stuff coming your way with that. So be sure to check that out when it comes out on 4th of July weekend. Please also make sure you're following myself and the show on Twitter. I'm at CFF_Jared. You can also follow the show at Chasing the Natty. And then you can follow Dwight as well at FF Peebles Champ. Great guy. Always great to interact with him on Twitter. Make sure you follow him as well. And then if you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. All those wonderful things that us YouTubers like to tell you to do. We do have a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the start of the season. We're actually on a pretty good pace to maybe hit that. So let's keep it going. And then if you're listening to this on podcast, make sure you follow us wherever you are listening and to leave those 5-star reviews if you can. Those help us out a ton. With that being said, Dwight, I think it is now time to head on over to our keep, trade, and cut segment. Couple of reminders I want to give everybody here. Again, this is a CFF podcast, so some of you might be wondering when we talk about this, why are we talking as much about their NFL potential? Again, CFF Dynasty, we only care about what they are doing in the college level. So I will not be speaking too much on what these guys could do in the NFL. Dwight, I know that with your experience with the daily, oh my goodness, what I forget?
Daily draft report.
Daily draft report. Good Lord. With the daily draft report, you have a pretty good idea of how some of these guys could translate to the NFL. So maybe you can kind of throw some wisdom in there. A couple of other things here. We are only comparing the players to one another. So again, each of these is going to be 3 different players. Just because I give somebody a cut in amongst the 3 players does not mean go and cut all of them on your rosters. Like a lot of these guys, you're going to see. You're asking me to debate between. You're asking both of us to debate between 3 really, really good players who, frankly, all 3 should be on your roster. But it is fun to kind of be forced into that position of which one would you keep, which one would you trade away, and which one would you cut. And then last but not least, some teams' needs are going to warrant different strategies, depending on whether you're a contender or rebuilder. We'll get into some of these where I kind of sit there and think about, like, it really depends on whether this is a rebuilding team or if it is a contending team. I will do my best to try to kind of find myself somewhere in the middle on it. But again, there's some tougher decisions here. So, Dwight, when you play keep, trade, or cut, what is your kind of mindset, especially when it comes to college players? Like, how would you kind of go about it?
And being we're talking from a CFF Dynasty standpoint, it's just, what are they going to do for me on the field? It takes away that Debbie element, that C2C element, as to whether they're going to be successful in the NFL. So it really makes you look for that. And I want a guy I'm going to get really good production out of for a couple of years. I don't want, just one big giant year left. I mean, I guess that's part of the game. You do need those players, but I want a guy who I'm going to get, top 10, top 20 at their position for the next 2 or 3 years, if at all possible. I'm definitely shooting for that. And it is really tricky as someone who plays so many different formats to separate those in all my drafts. So there are definitely times where I get to the end of the draft and I'm like, I wasn't drafting for the right reason. Like you get going, you're like, oh, this guy's going to be great. And then you're like, oh, what am I doing? So it's definitely tricky you got to kind of keep yourself in check a little bit throughout.
No, absolutely. That's why I never played in a Debbie league, because I could never, ever get the idea. I could never take the CFF out of me. Like with Debbie, you're fully interested in what they could do in the NFL. And like, one, I'm not good at predicting that. And then 2, like, again, my mindset is always like, oh, but he's still available. Like, this is like a 1st-round pick in CFF drafts. So I'm like, wait, nope, can't do that, Jared, can't do that. With that being said, Dwight, I think we can go ahead and hop over here to the first one. Again, like I said, these all come from people on Twitter. So really appreciate all of you guys who came out here and posted these on the Chasing Natty Twitter account, which again, this is the reason why you should be following that account, because that is how you get this kind of stuff onto the show. So what's going to happen here, if you're watching this on YouTube, I got 3 little symbols there. I got the keep, got the trade, and I got the cut there. And we will drag each of those into one of the 3 circles corresponding to one of the 3 different players. First one up here, this comes to us from Byron Watkins at Byron_Watkins on Twitter. He is asking about cut, trade, or keep Alton McCaskill, Jarquez Hunter, or Audric Estime. So these guys are all relatively going in the same place in terms of CFF redraft leagues right now. They're all, both Hunter and Estime have 3 years remaining of eligibility. McCaskill has 4 due to the fact that he missed all of last year with that ACL injury. Man, I think the easy cut here right now is Alton McCaskill. And I hate to say that because he's the only one of these guys in the transfer portal right now. And there is very little likelihood that he lands somewhere right now that I think truly will warrant him being a CFF asset over these other 2 guys. Currently, I think the favorite right now is Florida, and that'd be terrible for his value. Maybe better for his long-term Devy value. I think actually Billy Napier could do pretty well with him over there. But that's the most likely scenario. You got Arizona State and Colorado. Both could be fine, but I think neither one of those scenarios are going to get you as good as Jarquez Hunter or Audric Estime. Audric Estime is my keep here. I am really big on Audric Estime, especially after Logan Diggs is now out. Like I don't think people quite understand just how many vacated rushing production there is at Notre Dame this year. They're still going to run the ball a ton, and Estime is going to get a ton of that, even with guys like Price and Payne behind him. I think he's in for a monster year. And then Jarquez Hunter is the guy I'm going to go with trading here. There are several people out there I know in the CFF industry who are really, really high on Jarquez Hunter. And it's one of those things where you got to know your league. You got to know who's going to be big on a guy like Jarquez Hunter. Specifically, look for the guys who may have had Tank Bigsby on their team in the past. I think he's the one that you can definitely shop around right now out of these 3 and probably get the most value without sacrificing that much to your team. Because I personally am not super high on Jarquez Hunter because of Hugh Freeze not really having a ton of success at the running back position, at least season long in recent years. Like, you had some good games out of Day Hunter last year for the most part, but I think this is the order I'm going with. Alton McCaskill cut, Jarquez Hunter trade, and Audric Estime keeping. So, Dwight, I gave my spiel. Go ahead and give me what you would do if it's any different.
Oh, yeah. To me, I would just switch. I actually don't like Estime at all. I would cut him. He was like, the second I saw this list, I'm like, I just don't know if he's got the ability to carry the full load. I just, when I watched him as a high school prospect, I was not overly not overly overwhelmed with him. Plus, he flipped from Michigan State, so I don't like him. I'm not gonna lie. I'm petty like that. And I'll keep Hunter because I do think he's going to be a solid piece for the next couple of years. And
there you guys go. Trade him to Dwight. He'll be one of the guys that'll take him.
And then I would trade McCaskill because, like you said, there are going to be people that are going to still remember that name and remember what he has done and not realize that he is not going to probably do that ever again, no matter where he goes. So I think his name is still up there pretty high in a lot of people's minds. So I think you could probably get a little bit more trade value for him.
I think if McCaskill landed somewhere like Colorado, you could definitely find somebody who would be on that hype train and you could get somebody to trade for him there. You love Hunter here, Dwight. So again, people in my world are trading Hunter to you if they have him on your roster. What would you be willing to trade Hunter for?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot. Jeez,
yes, sir.
That's a tough one. Trying to think if we're doing like if we draft pick things. Like, because I'm not overly sold on his talent, but I do think he's got a really great situation there to be a really good back and replicate Tank's numbers plus some. So I think I would be comfortable giving up probably a 3rd round college pick. I don't know. That sounds, yeah. I think he's, where do we have him in our RB rankings? Just curiosity, because I have him like his top 20-ish. So I think he's quite a ways down, isn't he? Yeah, CFF. Wow. He's quite a ways down there, isn't he?
He's typically going as a round 10-ish back, so I don't remember.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So let me look up here.
Probably quite a ways down on ADP and stuff. Sorry.
No, you're good. Sorry. Let me just find him real quick.
I know I need to be
for this. Jarquez Hunter, we have him as our RB 83. I'm not sure who is dragging down that ranking. Because I don't think I have him that low. I'm not a big fan of him, but I don't think I have him that low. Let's see. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Hunter.
even worst case scenario, he's probably going to get 1,000 yards.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
we got a bunch of people who have him unranked.
yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, okay.
we're not super high on him as in
Okay.
terms of our team over here. So again,
Yep.
everybody trade your shares to Dwight.
Yeah.
He'll take them on.
We have estimate 38 and McCaskill 51. So that's
And
give
I
everybody
imagine
kind of an idea.
McCaskill is definitely going to
Yeah.
drop for me if I even have him ranked.
Right.
Because I
get
don't
it.
trust anywhere he can land right now.
Unfortunately, because I do think he's a talented back. I don't know
Yeah.
why he left Houston. I really don't. So
NIL, woo! All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next one. Thank you, Byron, for that question. This one's a fun one because this involves two freshmen.
Yeah.
And so I imagine this is a league where they've already had their freshman draft, which good on y'all. This one comes to us from one Buddha12 at Bottom Feeders 12 on Twitter. He is asking between Connor Wiegman, Brandon Innes, and Justice Haynes, the running back out of Alabama, wide receiver out of Ohio State, and quarterback out of Texas A&M. Not reverse respectively. I went backwards on that order there for some reason. Dwight, you're going to go first here, man. What are you doing with these three guys? Keep, trade, or cut?
When I first saw it, I thought it's not nice, but the more I think about it, it's actually a lot easier to me than I thought it was. To me, I'm keeping Justice Haynes. I think he's one of the top backs in that class and is going to be a really good producer at the college level. As typical with an Alabama back, it might take you 2 years to see it. Ennis, I kind of feel like he's already losing a little bit of value with not being there with Tate there and all the other wide receivers balling out. I fear that he's going to fall behind the curve. When you fall behind the curve at Ohio State, I mean, it's tough to break through and emerge. So I'm going to trade him. And to me, Wiegman's an easy cut. Just for CFF, I don't want anything to do with Wiegman. So that's pretty easy for me. So
yeah, I'm going to keep these symbols right where they are because I am exactly where you are with this, Dwight. Wiegman, I agree. CFF, complete cut. If it's Campus Canton League, obviously you're probably holding on to him a little bit more. But even still, even if you are looking at this from Campus Canton's perspective, like amongst these three guys, you got Brandon Innes going into one of the best producing NFL wide receiver rooms in the country, and he's probably the most talented guy going in there this year. Justice Haynes already, once again, going into the Alabama running back room that continuously puts out NFL running backs right there, and he's already standing out there. Again, if you're only choosing between these three guys, I think Wiegman's still kind of in a rough spot there. In terms of CFF Dynasty, though, I agree with you. Haynes is my keep here. I absolutely want an Alabama running back that is standing out as a freshman, and I do think Brandon Innes has just as high of an upside as Haynes does. The problem is, to me, there's a lot more questions there still to be answered. Like you referred to, Dwight, Innes has not been on campus yet. You have some of the other freshman wide receivers standing out there already, so he's a little bit behind the eight ball compared to those guys already. Again, I think his talent will catch him up. The likely scenario is that both Innes and Haynes are both CFF studs down the line because of the rooms that they're in and because of how much they just stand out talent-wise already. But I will keep Haynes as the guy who, to me, has less questions that remain to be answered versus Innes. So, good job there, Dwight. We agree. So that means that you are right this time.
I get one gold star. Yay.
Yeah, you got your gold star there. Let's go and move on here. And not all of these, I think, will be that quick. Again, you guys know me. I'm quite long-winded. Also, hold on. Give me a second.
No, not you. Come on now.
I'm going to mute something real quick because they're distracting me. All right. Let's go ahead and move on here. This one comes to us from Chris at FF Chris B on Twitter. He is asking us between three quarterbacks here. You got J.J. McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan, Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado, and Riley Leonard, quarterback out of Duke. Riley Leonard and McCarthy both have 3 years of eligibility, but quite frankly, it sounds like both of these guys are getting a little bit of NFL draft buzz. McCarthy especially being put in the first round by several mocks. So quite frankly, you're probably looking at only one more year for those guys. Shedeur Sanders, though, true sophomore, definitely getting at least 2 years out of him. The question remains, though, how much do you believe in Colorado? Well, my friends, let's look at this here. McCarthy, I think, out of these three guys, holds the least amount of value in CFF Dynasty, mostly because, again, he's probably gone after this year unless he has a rough year. And I think he, again, amongst CFF drafts so far this year, again, obviously not Dynasty drafts, but McCarthy's a 15th round pick in CFF drafts so far this year. Sanders in the 11th, Riley in the 5th. So already there, you're kind of seeing that McCarthy is, out of these three, if you're trying to trade for somebody, he's probably going to get you the least amount of value right here. Here's the kicker, though. I think actually McCarthy's probably better than Sanders in the long run. I'm really not sold on Colorado right now, given what I've seen from them. But because of McCarthy's inability to really get me any value out of a trade, I think he's the easy cut right now. You keep Riley Leonard. I think Riley Leonard's in for another really big year this year. I don't think there's anything really going on with Duke that tells me anything's going to be different there. You're talking about a guy who's going top 5, or he's a top 10 quarterback in CFF drafts. Hold on to him. And if you have Shedeur Sanders on your team, that's the man you trade right there. There are some true believers in Shedeur Sanders out there. I believe that he is the one that if you can find somebody who's willing to take on that risk of Shedeur Sanders and you can sell them on the fact that he will be around for 2 years, I think you can get a pretty solid return for him if you can find that one person in your league that is a true believer in the Colorado Buffs this year. Dwight, that's my spiel. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, totally agree. You couldn't have said it any better than Leonard was a screaming keep for me. Like, I was just like, okay, definitely this one. And like you mentioned, I don't think you can get as much for McCarthy. Just, a good quarterback, a great, like a real solid guy who's not going to lose any weeks. But
unless Chris K's in your league, in which case you could probably get a king's ransom for JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. He's already going to be screaming at us for this. You don't cut my boy JJ. Blah, blah. Like, but I would honestly think that in CFF Dynasty he would understand as well. So he's not going to put up the gaudy numbers the other two are going to put up. So yeah, I like that. Totally agree.
Alrighty. Let me just go ahead and put these little symbols back there. And let's move on to our next question. Thank you, Chris, for that question. Up next, man, this might be the hardest one we have here today because I literally put trade/cut between two of these guys. This comes to us from Benjamin Jacob. He is asking us, he's at SickEveryone2027 on Twitter. He is asking us between Gavin Sawchuk, Marquarius Squirrel White, and Joe Milton. This is a tough one in my opinion. So that's why I'm going to hand it over to Dwight to answer first. So Dwight, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah. All right. To me, looking at this right away, trade Joe Milton. I think that's just that one stands out as the big one for me. I think he's, obviously has really high value right now. This could bite you in the tail. He's probably going to have a gigantic season, but I've seen enough of Joe Milton in my lifetime to know that he is not a good quarterback. So I don't know. For me, it's an easy trade for him. Then it just goes down to the other two guys. I think Squirrel White's going to get that production. So will Gavin Sawchuk. So I kind of went back and forth between these two guys. I think I'm going to keep Sawchuk, actually.
Okay.
I like his opportunity. I'd like to think that Oklahoma's turning things around.
And you're going to cut Squirrel.
I know. That's a really tough one because I can see Squirrel being really, really good in CFF the next couple of years. So, but that's a tough one, man. That's really, really hard.
It is a really, really tough one here. Because again, there's risk to all three of these guys.
Right.
I mean, Joe Milton, again, I think I'm convinced that he will be a starter week 1 and everything like that. And I think he is set up for success in this system. We saw him perform well against Clemson. I think he'll perform better in this system than he did back in Michigan. The problem is there is still Nico Iamaleava sitting there breathing down his neck at any point. If he does kind of revert in any games, that could be a problem for him moving forward. Squirrel White, we all love him. But the problem is Tennessee's got a pretty good plethora of wide receivers, and it's quite possible that it could be a receiver by committee almost approach. I mean, obviously, there's
Right.
going to be big games from all of them. It's just, does it become one of those guessing games of which one goes off which week? The great best ball guys, but in a dynasty where you're probably not having a best ball scenario, unless you're in a league with Nate, in which case, like, good on you guys. But at the same time, then there's Gavin Sawchuk. He and White are in the same scenario here. Both of these guys got both these guys have, well, actually, Sawchuk has 4 years of eligibility remaining. Squirrel White, I believe, burned his red shirt, so I think he's only got 3 years of eligibility left. But he's still, both of these guys, you have at least 2 more years in CFF, so they kind of equalize themselves out there. Sawchuk, he's going to be a tandem in that backfield with Barnes. Barnes has that dead bone injury. It's not a nagging injury per se, because it's not like it's going to, it's just one of those injuries that could pop up at any time. So if that does happen, Sawchuk is a huge hit more than likely, because him and Barnes are clearing away the best 2 backs in that backfield. Again, this one's tough. I think I am going to disagree with you a little bit, Dwight. I'm going to go the opposite here. I'm going to keep Squirrel White. I think I'm willing to take the shot with Squirrel White in that slot role, being that only wide receiver that Joe Milton really can't outthrow. I think he's in for a ton of big games this year. And that really kind of brings me back down to, do I trade or cut Milton and Sawchuk? And I mentioned at the top of the show, this is where that question of, is your team rebuilding? Is your team contending? If your team's contending, I think you're going to want to have Joe Milton on your team. But if you're trying to build something for the longer term, I'd much rather have Gavin Sawchuk. I would rather kind of trade away Joe Milton to a team that is contending, and then try to get something back there and just kind of plan for the future just a little bit more. But again, what do I do here?
This was hard. This was a tough one.
Between these two, it is so hard. Because again, Squirrel White, he's the one I feel probably the best about, even though I kind of poo-pooed the whole wide receiver situation at Tennessee there a second ago in terms of them being able to spread it around. I would rather take the shot on 2 years of elite production potentially there in that position. I think I'm going to lean towards trading Milton and cutting Sawchuk. It's hard, but I think just that idea of being able to trade Joe Milton to a potential contender and then being able to build around that for a couple of years, I think could help you out a little bit more. He can get you a little bit more value than what I think Gavin Sawchuk can go for right now. Again, it depends on who you're trading to, but that's kind of my thought process.
You think Squirrel has the most trade value overall, though? Or like, if you were to say, I am a contender now and I need a quarterback, so I'm going to keep Milton.
Yes.
I honestly feel like you can get a ton more for Squirrel. Like,
I would agree there. But also, again, I think when you have your team, unless you are truly just like blowing it all up and everything like that, if you have an asset like Squirrel White, that's still somebody you're holding on for next year. Because if you're a rebuilding team in CFF Dynasty, you don't take 2 years to rebuild your team. With all the people that are on the waiver wire and everything like that, you just really need 1 or 2 really good pieces that you can either rely on this year or next year, and you can be right back in it the very next year. So I think Squirrel White is 100% one of those guys that you would want to keep on your roster, and that if he falls apart this year, then, well, crap, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Things happen. But at the same time, I think he does have the most value out of this bunch, but that's why I have him as the keep.
Great. Yep. I don't have any issues with that. I flip-flop between Sawchuk and Squirrel. So yeah.
Again, that was legitimately, I think, the hardest one. So good job, Ben, on asking that question. Let's get to our next one here. This one comes to us from Trev at T_Rev on Twitter. He is asking us between 2 wide receivers who are in the portal and then one that's just kind of chilling out there on little old Rice. You got Zachary Franklin, former wide receiver at UTSA, currently in the portal. You got Keon Coleman, former wide receiver out of Michigan State, who is currently in the portal. So Dwight already has him as the cut because Dwight's petty like that. And then Luke McCaffrey, kind of a random one kind of thrown in here.
Really
but you know
strange,
what?
yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver out of Rice here. So where do I go here? I think Zachary Franklin was like a death in the family for CFF fans. Like, it was one of those surprise out of nowhere. Nobody really considered this a possibility. Like, maybe when the portal first opened and everything, we were like, okay, maybe in that first window we could see him going off. But no, he comes back to UTSA. It looks like, all right, they're all running it back. And then just out of nowhere one day, Zachary Franklin, boom, in the portal. So if you have him on your dynasty teams, which I do, you don't know what to do with him right now. You're just praying he lands somewhere that somebody might see some kind of value in him, and you might be able to trade him away, because I really don't know. Because of that, I think he's the easy cut out of this bunch, because Keon Coleman is the one, I think, generating a little bit more buzz and interest among people in terms of where he could land. I know he just visited Florida State, which is... I know a lot of people are kind of interested in that. I don't know if people really see that as a CFF option per se, but I think once he lands somewhere, he might be the one that, if you're kind of wishy-washy on where he landed, you could probably find somebody who's like, oh no, he's out of Michigan State. He can thrive under the new offense wherever he landed. I think he's the one you could trade and get some value for, because Luke McCaffrey is one of those CFF guys where completely under the radar. Had a pretty good season last year. He's going as our wide receiver 33, so some people are in on him, some people not so much. But I think he's the one you keep out of this bunch. He has the least amount of questions to be answered right now. He has JT Daniels playing at Rice. I think he will, as poorly as JT Daniels played last year at West Virginia, I still think JT Daniels is an upgrade at quarterback compared to what he has been dealing with. I think Luke McCaffrey, out of these three, is probably the one you just want to hold on to your roster right now, because I am not entirely sure where Franklin or Coleman land that'll get you a better situation than what McCaffrey has at Rice. Dwight, agree or disagree?
I actually totally agree. I wasn't going to cut Keon. I do think he has a lot of name value right now. He didn't 2 weeks ago, but I think now all of a sudden it's nice to hear, people are like, oh yeah, I had all these yards last year. Now all of a sudden he's this. Now all this publicity is actually helping his value, I think, a ton. And I think Florida State's a pretty good place, and I really hope he lands there just for sake of production. Mm-hmm. And having Jordan Travis throw you the ball is definitely way better than Peyton Thorne. So I'm kind of hoping for him to land there. I think McCaffrey feels like the safest one, though, as a guy, you can just rely on. And like you mentioned, Franklin, I mean, where is he going to go that's better than what he had? It's rough. And I hate the fact that you would cut him because he was a first round pick. So if you did a CFF draft recently,
again, don't go and cut Franklin. But again, just among these three, he'd be the one I would cut. The other part of this is, I should have mentioned this as well. McCaffrey has 2 years of eligibility left, and I don't think he's planning on going to the NFL. I think he's planning on sticking around at Rice. So as long as they have a pretty decent QB situation there, he should continue to be productive. Meanwhile, I think, Zachary Franklin only has 1 year of eligibility left. So even wherever he lands, you're only going to get 1 year of him. And then Keon Coleman, he technically has 3 years of eligibility left here. But actually, he might only have 2. Yeah. But he's very clearly trying to go somewhere that can develop him to be an NFL draft pick next year. So I think you're definitely only getting 1 year out of him. So another point in the favor of Luke McCaffrey there.
Right. The only counterbalance I could think is you could probably still get more for Franklin than you could for Coleman. And I have no...
It depends on where each of them land, I think.
Yeah. I mean, just right now, today, not knowing where they're going, so I think people would pay more for Franklin.
Let me put this out there, Dwight.
Yeah.
Franklin lands at Oregon. Coleman lands at Florida State. Which one are you more interested in?
Coleman.
You're more interested in Coleman. Interesting. Explain.
Yes.
Explain.
Because I think Oregon's got more mouths to feed. I know Florida State's got Johnny Wilson and, a bunch of different good tight ends now. But I think Coleman's got a better chance to stand out in that crowd than Franklin does with the guys that Nix has in Oregon. So, all
right, I'll throw a counter argument out here then.
Really close.
Because I think I might actually be a little bit more interested in Franklin. This is coming from a guy that already has Franklin on a lot of his teams.
Yeah.
But I think Franklin at Oregon would be interesting because, again, he reunites with Will Stein, his offensive coordinator from UTSA. Right. And so he would understand that system pretty well. I think he'd instantly become easily in the top 3 wide receivers, if not one of the top 2. I don't know if he passes up Troy Franklin because Troy Franklin's just super talented like that. But we saw Will Stein was able to produce 3 CFF wide receivers for them for UTSA last year. So maybe it's not even that big of a deal if Franklin's the number 2 or the number 3 in that offense. He could still be a CFF productive wide receiver versus Coleman. I agree with you. He probably could stand out at Florida State, but I'm still not entirely sold on what the value is of a number 1 wide receiver for Florida State this year. Because last year, like, again, you had Johnny Wilson kind of break out down the stretch and everything like that. But who's to say that, again, it kind of reversed to what they were at the beginning of the season, where there wasn't really that number 1 standout guy. They spread the ball around a ton. Versus at Oregon, you're in the Pac-12, some of the worst defenses in the Power 5. You have to pass the ball to keep it in games, the high-scoring games. I actually might be a little bit more interested in Franklin there. But that's hypothetical. Neither of these guys have landed anywhere. We can discuss that more further when we get down the line. But for now, I think, Dwight, we will move on to the next question here. Thank you, Trev, for that last question. Let's go to Steven's question. Steven Johnson at StevenFantasyF on Twitter. Steven felt like talking about tight ends today. And so he's got 3 different tight ends here. He's talking about Jatavian Sanders out of Texas, Brant Kuithe out of Utah, and Austin Stogner out of Oklahoma. Dwight, wake it away. Take it away.
Get away. That's how I felt when I saw this question. Like, tight ends, get me away. No, this one actually was a lot easier than I thought it would be.
I honestly kind of agree.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping Sanders. I just think he might go to the NFL after this year, but I don't think he'll go. I think he's got the most upside as far as a pass receiver. Monstrous season. I think Kuithe's going to have a big season himself, but he's also 29 years old and done. He's got to be done with eligibility, I'd assume. So I would definitely trade him though, because you're definitely going to get a lot of value for him. He's a name that's out there in Stogner's, and just an easy cut for me. I don't have any faith in him being anything more than what he's been so far. 200-300 yards, couple touchdowns. I just don't. I don't see it,
dude. Austin Stogner is the third ugly stepsister between these 3 guys. Like, he's the one that was so ugly that they didn't even talk about him. Like, what is he doing in the same room as these 2 right now?
Exactly. One of these things is not like the other.
One of these guys is not like the other. So again, I fully agree with you. I'm on board with all where you have all 3 of these guys. Austin Stogner, easy cut there. I'm fully with you. Keep Jatavian Sanders. There's a likely world, in my opinion, that both these guys are going to the NFL next year. But Kuithe has to. He has only 1 year of eligibility left. There is a possibility that Sanders could come back after another year. And if you are looking at, first of all, you have both of these guys on your dynasty team. You're already looking at a really, really good dynasty team there. You drafted very well with these guys. Trade away Kuithe to a competitive, hungry team that needs a tight end, and then hold on to Jatavian Sanders, who I don't think has that. You're not looking at a huge drop off between Kuithe and Sanders there. At least in ADP value right now, I would get some value out of Kuithe right now. Be happy with the fact that you have the tight end 3 in CFF ADP so far this year, and just keep it going from there. And hope and pray that somehow Sanders returns for an additional 2 years, in which case you 100% won this keep, cut, and trade battle right here.
Okay, like it.
Yep. Alrighty, let's keep it going here. Steven, thank you for that question. Let's go and talk about Mr. Kevin Coleman's question. Kevin Coleman at @theboys_22. He's got 3 running backs for us to consider here. Dwight, we got Bucky Irving, running back out of Oregon. Raymond Davis, running back out of, I almost said Vanderbilt. That's where he was transferring from. Kentucky.
Yeah.
And we have Mr. Jace McClellan, running back out of Alabama. Where do I start with this one? We'll start with who I am keeping. I'm going to keep Mr. Jace McClellan. I am heavily sold on McClellan this year at the Alabama system. Yes, you're probably only getting 1 year out of him, but you are definitely getting 1 year out of Raymond Davis versus McClellan. Technically, you could come back next year, but even so, I think the Alabama running back position, especially with their QB struggles right now, I think the Alabama running back position is a much more lucrative place to be right now. And then in terms of who I am cutting, I'm going to go with Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving does have the most amount of eligibility out of these guys. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining here. My thing is, and I kind of made this pretty clear on the running back summit we had a couple of weeks ago, even though I lost the debate, I'm still really hesitant on Bucky Irving in this Oregon offense this year, mostly because I just don't think he'll get the volume. He's very efficient, which is really good to see, but at the same time, that staff really does seem to like Noah Whittington, and he's not going away. They're not going to let Irving really be that 3-down back they need him to be. So I'm quite hesitant there with him. And then I would probably go ahead and trade Raymond Davis. He feels like that perfect guy you have on your roster that you're probably looking at. You're saying, that's probably my, like third, maybe fourth best running back I have on my team right now. I could probably trade him away and maybe get something in return for a position of need I might have that might really put me over the top and get me in contender status. So, Dwight, your thoughts here? These are my three. I would say my confidence rating in terms of how I feel about these is probably like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I don't like it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I can't get on the Jace McClellan train. I just freaking can't. So I would trade him because I think he's got the most name value, although Bucky is getting a lot of name value as well, too. So I actually think Ray Davis is in for a monster year. All so right. I think he's going to have a huge year. So for me, he's a keep. If I've got one season,
hey Dwight,
between him and McClellan,
in a dynasty league together, and you got McClellan, I got Davis. Let's make something happen here, okay?
Yeah, I would do it. I wouldn't even hesitate. Yeah, not at all. So I just love Kentucky can put out those guys that can have those huge monstrous seasons, and I think they've got obviously some upgrades in quarterback, and they've got great receivers. So I can definitely see maybe them not leaning on running backs as much as they have in the past, but. So that, and then Bucky's a cut for me too. I just don't, I'm not a big fan. So I think it was just he got in the right place at the right time last year. So, yeah.
Yeah. Again, Bucky, I still think will be fine this year for the most part, but amongst these three, definitely, I'd say he's the one with the most risk right now. So let's put those back, unless you have any final thoughts here, Dwight.
Nope. I don't.
All righty. Let's get you back on the stage here. You're going to answer a question from a good old long friend of the show. For those of you who are from way back, Xavier's back, and he put in a question for us here. Keep, trade, and cut between Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., and Quinn Ewers. Not to take your thunder away here, Dwight, because you are the one answering this question first, but I do want to point out here, Nix and Penix, 1 year of eligibility left, both of them. Ewers has 3, technically. So, your thoughts there, Dwight?
Xavier, I don't like you. I'm just going to go right down to I'm just going to cut straight to the chase with this one. If I'm trading these quarterbacks, these quarterbacks to me have 1 year left. I mean, I'm just basically. And if you give me 1 year left of this, I want Nix. I mean, I want what he did last year. I mean, he carried so many of my CFF teams last year. So I'm definitely going to keep him. And then to me, I can get the most value for Ewers. I know that I'm probably biting a 2-year bullet, if he does take a little bit of time. But if he takes a little bit of time and doesn't have the year that we want him to have, then you're really going to be extra happy that you had Nix. You're going to be super happy because if he puts up the same numbers as Nix, you're probably not going to be happy, but he's also going to be gone. Mm-hmm. So you might as well trade him. And then to me, Penix is, we've seen his ceiling, and I love him as a quarterback, but out of these three, he's the one I'd cut.
That ceiling's pretty freaking incredible. Like if I
it is pretty damn good. Yeah.
Now my
I just don't think
thing doesn't want to. There we go. loading
I just
up.
don't know if you can trade. I just don't know if you can get much for him for trade.
I mean, he finished as a QB8 last year. Like, that's a pretty
Yeah.
incredible ceiling here.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I disagree with you slightly here, Dwight, because I'm going to switch the cut in the trade here. I agree with you 100%, though. Bo Nix is my keep here. Again, with the weapons that they're surrounding him with, they made an incredible offensive coordinator hire, in my opinion, bringing over Will Stein over from UTSA. What he did with Frank Harris was pretty close to what Kenny Dillingham was able to do with Bo Nix last year. So I'm 100% keeping around Bo Nix, who was the QB1 last year. I am trading Michael Penix Jr. and cutting Quinn Ewers. Of these three guys, like you said, Dwight, I kind of teased at the very beginning about like, oh, Ewers has multiple years of eligibility left while these other two guys don't. Yeah, Ewers is going off to the NFL draft next year. Unless he has an absolute bomb of a year this year, I think he has his eyes set on getting to the league next year. So pretty much all these guys have 1 year, like you said. Michael Penix Jr., to me, is the guy to go ahead and try to trade away if these three really are the number one, like the three options you have in your quarterback room right now. I would go ahead and try to get away with Penix. You're talking about a first, second round pick in CFF drafts this year. And again, because all these guys have 1 year of eligibility left, that gives you a pretty good idea of how people expect them to perform. I think you can trade him away. I don't normally like to think about this, but with Penix, it's been kind of a nagging thing in the back of my head. Those health issues could pop back up again this year.
Right.
And again, Ewers obviously wasn't exactly the healthiest person last year either, but Nix, we haven't really seen that many problems with in the past as well. I think some people are kind of forgetting about that with Penix a little bit, drafting him as high as they are. So I think you can get a pretty good bounty for Penix in the trade market there, much more than I think you can get Quinn Ewers. I know Quinn Ewers has a lot of name value there, but there's a lot of people who got burned pretty badly last year by him finishing QB 100 plus after drafting him in like the third, fourth round, going to Texas and everything. So I think that you could get a little bit more for Penix right now than Ewers, so that's why I'm trading him away. I think I saw Dwight mouth fair enough there.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was on mute, and I'm not even on mute. So I'm just like nodding, like, yes, this is an audio medium, and I'm nodding. Yes, I agree. Thank you, sir. Yeah. All right.
Fair enough. All right, let me put these little doohickeys back, and let's go ahead and hit up. We got two more to hit on here. This is a really good one from Marcus Harvey. Marcus Harvey _ on Twitter. Once again, three quarterbacks here. You got Sam Hartman, Jordan Travis, and once again, Joe Milton. People really wanted to know about what's going on with Joe Milton, I guess. To me, here's what you got going on here. I think you easily cut Hartman. I think out of these three guys, like Joe Milton, Jordan Travis, both CFF studs, it looks like, going into this year. Jordan Travis really set up for success in terms of the amount of weapons they're surrounding him with. Joe Milton, obviously, in that Josh Heupel system over there. Sam Hartman, I do think, is going to bring an element to the Notre Dame passing game that we haven't really seen out of them in quite some time. The problem is I don't see elite passing volume there, and I don't see a ton of dual threat ability. Not that Hartman can't run, and not that they won't give him carries around the goal line, because that's what they did at Wake Forest. Or that's what they have been doing at Wake Forest with all their QBs lately. But at the same time, that's a much bigger risk, in my opinion, than, again, guys like Joe Milton, Jordan Travis. So easy cut Sam Hartman here for me. So now that becomes the question of, do I trade away Jordan Travis or do I keep Joe Milton? Both of these guys have 1 year of eligibility left. It's a kind of a tough one. So I think because you are looking at just this year, I think I'm going to keep Travis and go with Milton. Even though I like Milton's system better, Travis has a much less likely chance of losing that starting job. This is Travis's team this year. There is nobody breathing down his neck in that quarterback room. They are going to ride or die on him. Milton, I still think it is very likely he starts the entire season and does very well for himself. But there is just that little bit of risk kind of going on there that he could perform really well some games and completely crap the bed in some other games. I think you get a little bit more consistency out of Jordan Travis and a little bit less risk there in terms of him losing his starting job. So I think I'm going to hold on to Travis and trade away Joe Milton where I can. So Dwight,
Yeah,
totally your thoughts on these guys?
No, I totally agree. We talked earlier in the show about Milton's trade value too. I mean, he's like the big sexy name right now. So yeah, you can get a lot for him. So I would definitely do that in a heartbeat. And Travis just feels safer. So yep.
Alrighty. Let's put the doohickeys back and let's
I don't like this last one. This one's hard.
This one, last one's hard. Yeah, you know, I don't really like this one. See, here's the problem. This guy was an absolute butthole coming into our comment section, completely rude. It's from some guy named Jared at CFF_Jared on Twitter. Like he comes in just asking about these three guys, just absolutely
Georgia
crazy.
Bulldog. Yeah,
I know those Bulldog fans, dude. They're absolutely nuts. Anyway, this butthole is asking about Derwin Burgess Jr., wide receiver out of Georgia Southern, Jamal Banks, wide receiver out of Wake Forest, or Tyler Shuck quarterback out of Texas Tech. I think this is the first question we have here that involves different positions. I think all the other ones have like been three different guys at the same position. This one actually kind of mixes it up a little bit. Got two wide receivers and a quarterback here. Dwight, set this more on straight. What's going on here? Where would you go with this?
This is really hard for me. To me, this is an unrational thing I have. I love Jamal Banks. I love the situation he's in at Wake Forest. I think he's the dude. I like Mitch Griffiths. I think he's in for a monster season, a couple years of eligibility left. So to me, Banks is my keep. I know that's probably not popular. Shuck is a trade for me. Just because I have not seen him on the field for an entire season. I realize that when he's on the field, he produces those elite numbers that we like, but I'm just not 100% sold on him. I've never liked him. I don't like the fact that he spells his name like show and they call him Shuck. It bothers me. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, I'm petty. No. So I don't know. I'm just not a big Tyler Shuck fan, but I realize he's got that value. And then Burgess, man, I love Burgess, but I just don't know what's going on at Georgia Southern. As of right now, I think their quarterback situation is really up in the air still. And this is one where I had to kind of dig a little bit at my CFF knowledge too, because I love Banks. Burgess, I don't have a whole lot on yet. So I'll defer to you on that. But for me, he's a cut.
So speaking from personal experience on this question, I didn't really know which way I wanted to go on this. Again, all three of these guys go relatively the same in terms of their value on CFF draft so far this year. Burgess, end of the 5th round. Banks, beginning of the 7th round. Shuck, right there in the middle of the 6th round. So these guys are pretty much all right there with each other. Banks and Burgess have 2 years remaining of eligibility. Both of these guys, I don't think, are really itching to go to the NFL, so it's very possible that they both utilize that last year of eligibility right there if they can. Meanwhile, Shuck has only 1 year of eligibility left. That all being said, I think I'm going to agree with you, Dwight, on where you have all of these guys. Shuck, if this person has other quarterbacks on his team that he is feeling very good about, he could easily trade away Shuck, try to get some value out of there, take advantage of his deeper quarterback room, give it to a team who's playoff hungry, wants to shoot for the upside with a guy like Shuck, and then you don't have to deal with Shuck's injury history as well anymore. So probably trade him away. That leaves Jamal Banks and Derwin Burgess. I think both of these guys have a lot going for them this year, both in great offensive systems. But I think I'm going to keep Jamal Banks just like you and cut Burgess, because Banks, I am pretty sold on being the number 1 wide receiver in Wake Forest this year. I like Donovan Green quite a bit, but man, that X receiver role at Wake Forest has just been an absolute CFF goldmine the last couple of years, and Banks has been all over that for this year. So I think I'm going to go with him and cut Burgess. Even though I think Burgess is in for another really good year, he's coming off of injury that kept him out of the end of last year. And you got Caleb Hood there that really looks like he's budding into a star for that Georgia Southern offense. I think he kind of carries the most risk out of these guys right now, as well as not being able to return as much value for you. So I think he'll be the cut out of these three. I agree with you. This is a pretty tough question.
You make me feel really good.
But I think
No,
I think I'm in the same boat as you, Dwight.
I just know when I don't watch a lot of Wake Forest. So when I was watching A.T. Perry, when I was watching Wake, I'm like, who is number 80? Like, holy heck. Like, he is a very dominant receiver, and he's got that dude mentality.
Well, yeah,
like he's the guy, and I love that.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if like Banks was a guy that I was just projecting to take over the eggs,
Right.
and he was like, oh, I'm just playing fully on system here. This is a guy that was able to kind of take over games last year as a backup. Again, you have the game against Clemson, 6 catches, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Later on, Boston College as the backup, 7 catches, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, dude has already shown that he can be that go-to guy for this offense. And another one, Liberty. Against Liberty, 6 catches, 55 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, you're talking about, again, he was the backup, and he was already kind of being willing to fill in for that role. And he also was getting an absurd amount of touchdowns for the number of catches that he was getting compared to the rest of the season, rest of the receivers. He's fully going to slot into that role. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. So glad we can agree on that, Dwight. And with that being said, again, a little bit of a shorter show for us this week, but Dwight, you did fantastic. And I think that brings us pretty much right here to the end of our show. Dwight, you have been, like I said, you've been fantastic, man. Great to finally have you on here. And why don't you go ahead and let people know what kind of stuff you're working on for Campus to Canton over the next couple of months?
Yeah, it's very deep right now in the CFF guide that's coming out. It's a lot of these guys are freaking animals. I mean, I'm amazed that, like, we just opened it up this week, and how many profiles are already in. Team profiles is just blown my mind. I go on there to edit them, and there's already like 30 of them in. I'm like, holy smokes, guys. like I'm used to like 10 or so every couple days, like how the Debbie guide was. So definitely that. Got a lot more CFF drafts coming up, CFF Dynasty. I'm just excited. The more I play CFF, the more I love it, and the more I want to get immersed into it.
It truly is the best.
Yeah, I don't find myself liking NFL fantasy as much anymore. So I definitely enjoy my CFF leagues. Like, if I win a CFF league or a CFF side of Campus to Canton league, I'm super happy. Like, if I win the NFL, I'm like, oh, I got lucky. I feel like CFF is so much more validation for hard work. So
yeah, that's what I was about to say. It truly feels like you are rewarded for how much time you're putting into truly understanding all of these teams, finding those little nuggets on Twitter, listening to all of those podcasts that are out there and everything. Because again, like when you're listening to CFF podcasts, everybody has such different opinions. And that's what's so much fun about it, is that you can listen to one guy talk about one team and they absolutely love the situation. You listen to another guy and suddenly it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be as on that team. But again, you kind of pick and choose, you kind of figure yourself out, and it is a ton of fun throughout the regular season and the off season. So we got a lot of great stuff going on there. Again, Dwight, you've done a fantastic job. Your daily draft report is incredible. For those of you who are getting ready for your rookie leagues on the NFL side of things and everything like that, go check out Dwight's hard work over on the Campus Canton podcast feed. Pretty much almost every major draft prospect Dwight has brought on a guest to discuss. And again, it's a great breakdown, a great way to catch up on all of these different guys, to know about each and every one of them. So make sure you go and check all of that out. In terms of things over here, like I said, Dwight, you've been fantastic.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
A little bit of a shorter show and everything today, but that is okay. Got a ton of great content coming to you guys for CFF Dynasty Month for Chasing the Natty. Again, next week we'll be talking about some supplemental players that'll be widely available in a lot of your CFF Dynasty leagues. For those of you who are in redraft leagues but might want to hear about some little bit deeper guys that are pretty widely available that you might want to take a shots on this year, definitely check that out. We'll be talking instant impact freshmen the week after, and then we'll have a big finale. We'll bring on several people, and we're going to do a freshman and supplemental guide live during the show between 3 to 4 of us. It is going to be absolutely fantastic. Again, Lots of great stuff coming y'all's way. Really appreciate all of you guys listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful and blessed weekend. See y'all.